I say defined, mathematically defined as a series of sinusoidal waveforms. And so this horrible thing up here can be defined as a series of sinusoidal waveforms. That's a beautiful way to see sinusoidal. Beautiful, isn't it pretty? We can add a whole bunch of those together and get any waveform. And so basically, if we look at it, that's a sinusoidal, it's based on a circle, and sine waves have defining points, defining characteristics, their frequency, amplitude, and phase. How fast do they happen? How big are they? And when do they occur? And so when do they start? So that's the phase. When does it start? So how often does it happen? The frequency. How big is it? And when does it start? When does it start? And so somebody a long time ago did this amazing GIF of Fourier transforms, and it's much clearer than what I'm going to present to you, so I'm going to show you their GIF first. But the three defining characteristics of a sine wave is how often does it occur, how big is it, and when is it occurring? Does it start at the beginning? Does it start part of the way through? Or does it start at the end? And this is very important for us later on because we're going to talk about coherence across the brain. I would like to say that I made this, but that would be a lie. All right, so here is our first sine wave. Look at him. Just cycling through, and it's making a beautiful sine wave. Now, if you take a smaller circle, you place it on there, you have the waveform from the big circle, that's this guy. And then you have the waveform from the smaller circle. Look at him, he's the tiny guy. So big waveform, tiny guy. If we go into 3, see him? We have, and then here we have at 4. And this is just us using varieties of these waveforms to build a square wave, to make a square wave. But we can make any wave with combinations of this. The beauty of this is you never have to know this. You only have to know that this is kind of how it works, that you can add these together in a variety of ways to make different types of waveforms. And that it is a real thing based on basic geometry. And so we're not even talking higher order math here, it's just basic geometry. Fourier's book was not a bestseller, by the way, so don't feel bad about not liking it. I have a copy, not a bestseller. It's not going to get worse.
It does make sense though, like that GIF puts a lot of things in perspective. Could you put that on Blackboard?
I could try. I've been having some trouble capturing the animated GIF. I'll put a link to it, but they keep taking it down and moving it. I'll make a video of it. There we go. I'll make a video of it. All right. What I use in the lab, and by the way, there are a couple of different laboratories that use different systems. Their differences are, for the most part, irrelevant. This is the one I use. Most of these recordings are from me, so it looks like this. All right, EEG is measured from a series of electrodes on the surface of the head. The numbers of electrodes range from as few as 3 to as many as 256. I use 128 channel one. Be honest with you, anything above 128 is ridiculous. There's no purpose to doing more than, so if you're wondering what stage of sleep you just hit right there, you actually, right there, or Vince had an actual K-complex going on there. So, and then he woke himself up. So, the montage is just where we put them on the head. so that if you put a set of electrodes on the head, and I put a set of electrodes on the head, and you put a set of electrodes on the head, we all know where they are, even if you use different measuring systems. You use one montage, I might use another montage, you might use another montage. It's just where they are on the head. That's all it is. Why is it important? Back in the day, we used to think that the brain lay in a specific pattern under the surface of the skull. Remember phrenology? And it's based on that idea. Not so true. But we used to think that, but it's also pretty good to know where this stuff comes from. Because although it's not perfect, it gives us a pretty good idea of what's going on.
So it records electrodes specifically on top of the head, not on the brain, just
On the surface of the head, and so we can get muscle activity and we can get eye blinks. In fact, in this particular one, these lines are really small. I'll turn this back on. In this particular one, up here is where the eyeballs are. And these two electrodes right here are actually around the eyes. And see this guy right here? Well, he's moving from one side to the other. He's moving from very negative to very positive. And the back of your retinas have a negative charge. And so if your eyes are facing this way, the bulk of your retina is here, and so it's more negative on this side. And if you look over this way, it becomes more negative on this side. And so we're actually looking at the retinas moving from side to side here. So moving from, the eye is moving from left to right. Whew, that hurt real bad. And the danger here, right before you ask me a question, the danger here is, here's the data we want to look at, and look at how this is messing it up. We know it's not involved. And so we want to get rid of that, but I just wanted to show you that it's there. Yes?
So positive charges can push negative charges, like back and forth?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
So that's exactly, so it's like if there's more positive on one side, the negative will go to this side and more, and then it just kind of fluctuates back and forth.
Yes, and what you just described is a dipole, which, believe it or not, you just described the fundamental principle of EEG, dipoles. But I'm not going to talk about those. But good call. Now, wave terminology. Guess what, guys? Just doing definitions. Just some definitions here. No thinking involved. A waveform. This word is a deflection is a change from the baseline, from zero. Back in the day, when Hans Berger first did this, and my mentor's EEG system was like this too. It was on paper. It was a pen on a piece of paper. And the positive or negative charge would deflect the pen back and forth, and back and forth.
Like a lie detector?
Like an old school lie detector. In Meet the Parents, do you remember Meet the Parents?
No. I've never even heard of that.
In Meet the Parents, that lie detector, which was old school, actually belonged to a buddy of mine. And because they're not used anymore, and so they had to get it out of his basement and clean it up to use it. But it deflected it back and forth, and when things came to the left side of the paper, we considered them negative. When we flipped them up in the old days, and in your textbook, that put the negative on top. And so that's why in your Gazzaniga book, a lot of times you'll see negative on top. It's just a default from that old school way. I always put positive on top, because if I have to think negatives on top, that's too much thinking right there.
Why wouldn't they just flip it the other way? Like mirror image it?
I got nothing.
It's like baseball, one guy did it, therefore we all got to do it.
But we call this a deflection, and in either direction, it's a deflection. In honesty, in EEG, it doesn't matter so much whether it's a positive or negative deflection one way or another. It's a sinusoidal waveform. It really doesn't matter. The P.